Joining us now, Pete Snyder. Pete, the chairman of Disruptor Capital. He is chairman and founder of that. He's also the chairman of the Ed Gillespie for Governor campaign. Pete ran for lieutenant governor in 2013, finishing second at the convention to E.W. Jackson. Pete was at the debate. Pete, good to have you with us.
Hey, Johnny, great to be with you on this Monday morning.
What was Northam's message in this debate, in your judgment?
John, I think it is exactly what you said about 30 seconds ago. He tried to say any kind of disparaging thing about the president that he could. Then he would prattle off the words healthcare, then throw in a noun and throw in a verb, and then do rinse and repeat. That was it. I mean, it was really astounding in the fact that Ralph Northam's been a politician, been in elected office for 10 years on state issues, and he seemed way out of his league any time a state issue came up. It was truly astounding. I know what you just said about Susan, and she's a very nice lady, and the Democrats, and they certainly keep a pretty iron fist on keeping people in line. But they got to take their product back into the garage and give it one hell of a tune-up, or else they're going to be in for some real trouble come this fall.
You know what? It kind of reminds me of the Hillary campaign at the end. Like, nobody knew what she stood for. I mean, this is the bizarre thing, Pete, and you nailed it. Ralph Northam is a great guy. He's a really nice guy, and he's done a good job in his career. He's a baby doctor. He's been in the Army. He's got great credentials, and he was a solid state senator for a lot of things, and he's basically was a moderate. I don't know what he is now. He's had to pander, but I think you nailed it. I mean, they are nationalizing this election. They're not talking about Virginia, and they have no message. And it didn't work for Hillary. I suppose what they're looking at is Clinton beat Trump in Virginia by 5. But I got a lot to talk about today. But the first thing is, a lot of people don't realize over 1.8 million people voted for Trump in Virginia last November. Over 1.8 million. And then when you add in those that voted for Trump and Evan McMullin, who was the alternative conservative to Trump, you're over 1.9 million. You add in Gary Johnson, the libertarian. There were some Trump voters potentially there. You know, you're at almost 2 million. So, yeah, they got their vote out and they won by 5, but they're not going to repeat that this November. I think this race, Pete, is going to be razor thin. How about you?
Hey, John, I totally agree. And on top of that, you had 400,000 people who came out and voted for President Trump in 2016 that didn't participate in the 2013 election, which was shockingly razor thin. So, you know, I feel very good about our ability to mobilize the base, get people out, and win this thing, because I got to tell you, I agree. Ralph Northam is one hell of a nice guy. Everyone will tell you that. But he's a doctor without a pulse. I mean, you know, there is zero excitement going on with this guy. And I was just shocked. I mean, it seemed that he wanted to run off of that stage. He couldn't wait for that debate to be over. He was just hanging on to a thread every time Judy Woodruff tried to nationalize the debate. I mean, I think it took 6 or 7 questions, so we had one question about the economy of Virginia or jobs. But he's out of his league, and it was just an old-fashioned rout. It reminds me a lot, John, in 2014, everyone said that Ed Gillespie didn't have a chance against Mark Warner, and he rolled into that first debate for the VBA and just kicked the stuffing out of Warner. Same thing happened on Saturday. It was an old-fashioned whooping.
Well, look, the 2014 debate, Warner was caught flat-footed. There was no doubt, and I think when you look at Gillespie's performance, a lot of people underestimated him in that debate. But you're basically taking the position here, Pete, that this was a Gillespie rout. You know, here's the problem. Nobody saw it. It had some coverage in the paper, but no TV, no radio, nothing. And there's only 2 other debates coming up. So how do you get this message out?
Well, I think you do it by barnstorming the state. I think Ed's probably working twice as hard, 3 times as hard as Ralph. I can't find Ralph at any events out there. I think, you know, they're trying to hide him and make this whole race be about President Trump, and that's not going to work. I think you nailed it. The very same people that brought you Hillary Clinton's campaign are bringing you Ralph Northam. They thought that Hillary didn't need a message, that inevitability was the best way to get elected president of the United States, and all they had to do was crash Donald Trump, and it didn't work. And it's not going to work in Virginia right now. Look, we're the only game in town in the entire country. Nothing's happened in New Jersey, and our people are paying attention, and they know that they have a fighter in Ed Gillespie. And he's right on the issues. And if you listen to Ralph Northam, when he does say anything besides Donald Trump, he's talking about increasing the size of government and higher taxes. John, that's no way to win in Virginia. So I feel great about Ed and his campaign and where he stands on the issues. And I think this is a real turning point. Whether or not millions of people saw it or not, it set a marker for how this race is going to be run and the fight that Ed Gillespie is going to bring to it, and also the issues that are going to determine this thing. It's going to be determined on taxes. It's going to be determined on jobs, and it's going to be determined on making sure that those 400,000 people who came out and voted for Donald Trump are out there in force on Election Day in November.
Pete, I want to run a clip here on one of the exchanges. I want to get your take on it, where I was not there, but I did see the video, which I thought was one of the key turning points in this debate on sanctuary cities. Let's run the tape. Ed Gillespie and Ralph Northam in Saturday's debate at the Homestead.
Mr. Gillespie, I guess I'm just asking the two of you to clarify further what your differences are on this, on immigration.
He is for in-state tuition for illegal immigrants, and I am not.
Okay, so I thought that was a big win for Gillespie there because Ralph Northam garbled his answer. I don't even know what he said from that tape. What were some of the other big times of this debate that you thought Gillespie scored well, Pete?
Well, there was one key moment where probably about a third of the way into the debate when Ralph Northam tag teaming with the moderator, Judy Woodruff, kept on making this a national. Every single question was about Trump. Every single question was about health care, national and federal issues. And finally, Ed Gillespie said, look, we're in Virginia. Aren't we supposed to be having a debate about Virginia issues? And, it was a bipartisan crowd at the VBA. The entire room broke out in applause, John. So I think that was a telltale sign about, what voters here in Virginia want to be talking about. And then secondly, I just, if you go through every single issue, unless this is, the corrupt WBA or something like that, I don't think you'd have a judge that gave a single round to Ralph Northam. And it was, so much so that after the debate, you know how this works, John, that, candidates go get a glass of water and then go right out in the press scrum. Ed took about 30 seconds, took a sip of water, wiped his brow, hopped into the fray, held court for, maybe 10, 15 minutes. Bob Goodlatte stepped in there. I stepped in there as well, answered every single question under the sun to the press. Ralph Northam hid. He didn't want to go out there, and it really took Alan Suderman to berate the Northam campaign to finally get Ralph, after maybe half hour, 45 minutes, to actually talk to the press, and he talked to him for, 90 seconds. Mm-hmm. So this is all inside baseball, but these things are telling. Ralph Northam was not prepared for that debate. After 10 years of being in office and really being an understudy to Terry McAuliffe, it doesn't seem like he's learned anything about Virginia issues. And if he's going to play four corners, offense and try to run out the clock and make this about Donald Trump, he's in for a real surprise. So I couldn't be happier with Ed Gillespie's performance over the weekend, with the response from the crowd and activists out there. This pipeline issue for Ralph is a real problem. I don't know if you saw, John, there was a protester within the first 30 seconds of the debate that was heckling Ralph, and this is an issue that Tom Perriello tried to press on Northam and pin him down and never was able to. It's a real problem. It's a real issue. It was the front page of the headlines in the paper out there. And Ralph is had to go so far to the left in his primary. He's getting pinned down on these things. So, Susan may be ruling with an iron fist and trying to have everyone get in line in the Democratic Party, but that doesn't mean the voters and the activists will do the same. The party apparatchiks, sure, they listen But I'm telling you, this is not the party of Hillary Clinton. This is not the party of Barack Obama. It's the party of Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. And those folks aren't listening. And those folks want blood over this pipeline. And they're going to get a pound of flesh out of Ralph Northam.
Well, it's not the party of Terry McAuliffe either. And I just got into it with Susan Swecker over this. Look, if you want to federalize this race, okay, go ahead and do that. I think it's going to backfire on them. I don't think it's a sound strategy, but that's just me. But the more you federalize it, you have to ask the question. Everybody knows that Virginia's economy is tied to the federal government. Sequestration, the Navy, carriers, things of that nature, right? Defense spending. And the president has a tremendous amount of leeway in where that money goes, right? We can get an aircraft carrier in Jacksonville. We can get an aircraft carrier in Norfolk. Pick one. Both can accommodate it. So why you would antagonize the president of the United States in the way that Northam has, that McAuliffe hasn't done. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It's like,
and look, God bless Terry. Yeah, take a page out of Terry's book.
Terry's never done that
right now, but he knows better. He's smart. And Ed Gillespie had one of his best lines of the debate. He said, Ralph was crowing about that ad where he calls the president a narcissistic maniac, and then even opined on his medical opinion on it and all that kind of aw-shuck stuff. But Ed looked at him and said, "Well, Ralph, what are you going to do when we're dealing with trying to make the port deeper in Norfolk and trying to add more fleets, more ships to our fleet? Are you going to call up the White House switchboard and ask for the narcissistic maniac and say, hey, can you throw in a couple more ships for us?" Ain't going to happen that way.
No, it's not going to happen.
This president, this guy's a relationship guy. He has major business interests in Virginia. He wants the Commonwealth to do well. But we need to make sure that there is someone who can do business with this White House, with this cabinet, but also who knows how to call balls and strikes. And if there's something going on that isn't right for Virginia, he can step up and say, hey, look, here's how we make it better for Virginia, or this policy is going to be bad for the Commonwealth.
Right.
But most importantly, we need to get our economy moving.
Right.
It's been going sideways under Terry McAuliffe and Ralph Northam. I'm an entrepreneur. You're an entrepreneur, John. We got to get this thing humming again, and Ed Gillespie is our best chance to do it.
What's Ed's message?
Very clear. If you want bigger government and higher taxes, go with Ralph Northam. If you want to make sure get our economy humming again, if you want to embrace liberty and make sure that we don't have sanctuary cities in Virginia, that we don't have tuition for illegals, if you want to make sure that we have the Commonwealth moving in the right direction, you go with Ed Gillespie. It's plain and simple. You want to make sure that we actually have education choice. We break the stranglehold on education in Virginia, make sure that's always improving. You go with Ed Gillespie. Ralph Northam, it reminds me of, I don't know if you saw this goofy Michael Phelps versus a shark thing this weekend. Mm-hmm. You catch any of that?
No. Johnny,
you have any idea what I'm talking about?
No.
They hyped this whole thing. Olympian Michael Phelps was going to race a great white shark.
Okay.
Hyped it for weeks, drew an audience. Guess what? They have the guy in the water, they have divers around him, and they have a CGI shark racing against them. And people were outraged. Twitter blew up. People were upset. That's what's going on here. They're trying to make this race Ralph Northam versus the President of the United States. That's not the case. He's running against Ed Gillespie, and in round one, Ed Gillespie whooped him fair and square, and that's what's going to happen in November. So we had a real turning point this weekend. We got to keep that positive momentum going. John, thanks for everything you do to get to get around the fake media and the mainstream media and get our message straight out to voters. This is going to be a real turning point for the country, too, come November.
Pete, do you have offhand the next debate? Is that the one in Roanoke?
No, I believe it's the one in Fairfax in September. So that's coming up in a couple weeks, but I'm glad you brought that up because, there's a reason why Ralph Northam only wants 2 more debates. Because he's not any good at it and he doesn't know the issues.
Right.
Ed Gillespie came out and asked for 10 debates. Shoot, I'm sure we'd love to have 20 debates.
Right.
You realize there's not going to be a debate in Hampton Roads.
Unbelievable. It's just
it's
three debates is ridiculous. 3 debates is really ridiculous. In fact, it's not even 3 because the debate Saturday nobody saw it. This is the thing. It was seen by like a handful of people and some media, It was streamed. It had 150 people, somebody told me, watching it. It's stupid the way they did it. So there's only going to be 2 debates that are going to get any play in the media. And it just isn't enough for the voters of Virginia. It's a disservice to Virginians to be able to see their 2 candidates and figure out what to do. And again,
it is. And John,
disservice.
you need to keep up you need to keep up the pressure on that. We'll keep up the pressure, but there need to be more debates. I saw, on social media, Ben Tribbett was complaining about that over the weekend. And shoot, I think both you and Ben Tribbett would be great moderators for a debate. Let's get that going.
Well, let's get that going, and I think that's a good idea.
Get Ryan Nobles in there. I mean, Virginia Tech is dying to have a debate. So let's, there are real issues that matter to Virginians. How our economy is moving. What are we doing with our constitutional rights? Look at in the Second Amendment. Ralph Northam was bragging that he got an F from the NRA. Ed Gillespie's bragging that he got an A. So, we have real critical differences in this governor's race, and we need to make sure that voters know about it.
All right, I got to take off, Pete. I'm out of time. I want to thank Pete Snyder for being with us. He's the chairman of the Ed Gillespie for Governor campaign. More information, edforvirginia.com. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network.